It is truly the best day ever when fantasy football is officially back, and I will tell you that this game was actually way more entertaining than I originally thought it was going to be. But I can also tell you for a fact that things are going to change in fantasy football rankings moving forward. Starting out with the Cowboys side of the ball, and Javonte Williams, where did that come from? I mean, Javonte Williams actually looked good on a per-touch basis, and I actually don't think the numbers reflect on this one. He had 15 carries for 54 yards on the ground and 3.6 yards per carry for 2 goal line touchdowns. Now, I do want to emphasize that they were 2 goal line touchdowns, and he did not have a big run or anything like that. There was nothing of the sort. But I think what really set it apart was when you watch Javonte Williams in this game, he actually did show a little bit of explosion, particularly getting around the edge on one third down play where he only got 1 yard. But if you remember plays like last year on the Denver Broncos, I mean, the guy literally looked like he couldn't move very well anymore. So Javonte Williams, I will say, showed a couple things for us tonight. Number one, he is the clear lead back in this backfield. It's not close. Like Jaden Blue, we didn't even see him tonight. Miles Sanders, we did not see him after the big fumble. And Javonte Williams was a guy that they used at the red zone very consistently. And I will say this, Javonte, again, looked really good on a per-touch basis just based on his explosion level and his vision against defenders. Now, I will say you cannot ignore the fact that Jalen Carter, of course, missed this game because he spit on Dak Prescott before he even took a snap and got ejected from the game. That impacted Javonte Williams' fantasy output, and it impacted the game as a whole. I am not sure that I could see this level of fantasy output from Javonte Williams if Jalen Carter had played that entire game. But of course, all we have to go off of is what we saw on tape. And I can tell you this for a fact. Most defensive lines that the Cowboys do play this year will not be as good as the Eagles' defensive line. So I do think that this one is actually worth keeping an eye on. And going off that same thing, Miles Sanders was the clear change of pace back up until the fumble at a very critical portion of the game. Miles Sanders did break off a big run, but he looked pretty slow. I mean, the guy literally looked like I could have caught him running down the field. But Miles Sanders clearly was their preferred second back or change of pace back in that game up until they just said, we can't afford to put you back on the field anymore because you become a liability and you cost us a turnover right here. I mean, Javonte Williams even got work out of the backfield as a receiving back, along with Miles Sanders getting 1 catch. But it is very clear that this is Javonte Williams' backfield, and I will say, I will vouch for this. I do believe that at this point, Javonte does look like the best running back out of who we saw tonight. He's clearly better than Miles Sanders, and we don't know much about Jaden Blue yet, but we do know that the Cowboys do prefer him. And I would say CeeDee Lamb, I'm going to talk about him for a couple reasons here. Number one, I think it's very clear that CeeDee Lamb is obviously still the number one. Like, nothing has changed when it comes to CeeDee Lamb's role. But CeeDee Lamb dropped some big balls tonight. I mean, he had one drop over the middle of the field in the second half. He had a really, really big drop at the end of this game when it could have totally changed the tide. I mean, they could have possibly won the game if they were able to execute on the deep ball to CeeDee Lamb. And then, of course, CeeDee Lamb drops the 4th down pass that he dove for and reached out for. A little bit of a tougher catch, but still a catchable ball. So CeeDee Lamb left some points on the board tonight. But I would say for fantasy purposes, 7 catches for 110 yards in a full PPR format, like, that's a good game still. And this is something you can continually expect from CeeDee Lamb. So I wouldn't say anything has changed there particularly. But I will say this. A lot of people will think things have changed for George Pickens, and this one has not changed for me. This is exactly what I have expected from George Pickens all offseason long. George Pickens was out-targeted by Jake Ferguson, who we will go over here in a little bit. George Pickens had 3 catches for 30 yards, and he had a very critical catch, by the way, towards the end of the game to keep their drive alive. But it was not enough for them to be able to target him on a more consistent basis. All of his targets, basically, were very similar to what he had in Pittsburgh. Lots of deep routes and an occasional comeback to 10-yard out route. This is one thing everybody just has to know when it comes to George Pickens. The history of wide receivers that leave Pittsburgh is not ideal. And one of the main reasons for him particularly with the last several, is that these guys do implode. And if you are acting like George Pickens did not implode over in Pittsburgh, you are forgetting history. This guy, in my opinion, still is going to implode once this team is losing games and he is not getting the ball as much as he wants. That's when he will become loud and things will implode in Dallas. That's why I've been saying all offseason, it's not a talent thing with Pickens. I am off of Pickens because I already know that he won't get the targets that he thinks he deserves, and he probably does because, for example, I think George Pickens could have been able to make that catch down the sideline on that 4th down throw at the end of the game before CeeDee Lamb could have made that catch. I think Pickens would have made the play on that particular route. So with Pickens, I just think he's in a tough spot to where this offense is going to continue to hyper target CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens is viewed as not much more than a deep threat / game-breaking type of wide receiver. So a lot of people, their opinion should change on this one as to what I've been saying all offseason, but my opinion personally has not changed. I will say this. Kavontae Turpin made his mark for me tonight personally. Now, Kavontae Turpin is not blowing your mind with the stats or anything like that. But I will say this. Kavontae Turpin was always on the field in 3 wide receiver sets, basically. Jalen Tolbert took his place a couple of times, but Kavontae Turpin was out there quite a bit. And he was all over the place. Like, he got 2 rushing attempts for 9 yards, and he got 2 catches for 18 yards. This guy's constantly in motion. They always want to use him in different ways. They give him the ball out of the backfield. They give him out routes. They give him all kinds of routes. This is a guy that I would say keep your eye on with the waiver wire. Because if George Pickens does implode, like I do think it's very possible he will, Kavontae Turpin could easily see his role just increase over time on this offense right here. And speaking of the waiver wire really quick, guys, we are offering the first automated waiver wire tool to the fantasy football market. It has never been done before, and it is the greatest waiver wire tool that you could ever imagine. You can eliminate those late nights to where you get up after waivers run to try to claim another player. Our system automates that process. And to sweeten the deal for you, if you sign up for our premium membership, I will break down your team for you after your 12-day free trial is over. So once you are out of that 12-day free trial period, I will break down your team, and it's a great offer right now. So go down in the comments, grab the link that's there to fsroundup.com, and sign up to FS Roundup today. And as I alluded to, with Jake Ferguson, like this guy, I will say this. Before the second half started, I was thinking to myself, yeah, this player's still not very good. Like, there's just not much there with this guy. But I do think it's worth noting, like, the amount of targets and work that Jake Ferguson got. He did not blow you away with stats. 5 catches for 23 yards is nothing to write home about. But I will say that he was very involved for this team. And I would say acted as their second possession receiver behind CeeDee Lamb. So I do think there will be utility moving forward for Jake Ferguson to be a start of the week type of player at tight end if the matchup allows it. Obviously, the Eagles were never going to be an ideal matchup when you've got not only a really good secondary back there, but also a lot of good linebackers like Zach Bond who can kind of cover a lot of different areas in the field. I think Jake Ferguson is a tight end to keep your eye on in fantasy football. Now, moving over to the Philadelphia Eagles. A.J. Brown was a ghost tonight. Honestly, I saw people putting up missing person posters of him. Like, he was nowhere to be found until the very end of the last drive when he caught like a 2-yard route. Like, he was non-existent. And I've been saying this for a lot this offseason. I do think it's worth noting that A.J. Brown, after the Super Bowl was over, said he really wasn't satisfied with the Super Bowl win and alluded to not being as happy as a lot of people had been saying during reports throughout the NFL playoffs in 2024. People called me crazy for thinking that that was a real thing. I think it's very, very real. I don't know why this team would not want to target him in a game like this that became really close, like maybe closer than they had anticipated it becoming. How in the world would they not think A.J. Brown could help unless it was for his attitude? I don't know, guys. Am I crazy or not? Because A.J. Brown was a non-factor tonight, and they could have definitely used him. And I will say this, Devonta Smith did not do much as well, but Devonta Smith did have a couple more targets than A.J. Brown. I think he had like 3 total in this game. But Devonta Smith had 3 catches for 16 yards in this game, so it wasn't like he did much anyways. The real threat in this game, if you ask me, was Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert was their possession receiver by far in this particular game. 7 catches for 44 yards for Dallas Goedert. Again, nothing to write home about on this game right here for Dallas Goedert. But my ranking of Dallas Goedert will change moving forward because it was not A.J. Brown who was the possession wide receiver. It was not Devonta Smith who was the possession wide receiver. It was Dallas Goedert in those really short routes and intermediate routes over the middle of the field on the sidelines that Dallas Goedert was getting, opposed to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. It was a very shocking thing to see coming from someone who wasn't that big on Dallas Goedert coming into this game. I always thought he was just kind of a little bit overrated. So I was really surprised to see Dallas Goedert's involvement in this game. As was I surprised to see Jahan Dotson's involvement in this game. Now, I don't want to go as far as to say you should be looking for Jahan Dotson on the waiver wire. I don't think that we're there yet. He had 3 catches for 59 yards tonight, and the majority of his work and his production came from one big, beautiful deep pass by Jalen Hurts in the first half. Like, it was a beautiful deep ball. But I will say this, Jahan Dotson, do not expect this to continue moving forward, with Jahan Dotson getting more work and more targets than both Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. I think what we can expect, though, is Dallas Goedert's involvement moving forward while he is healthy, because they seem to really like him over the middle of the field, like I didn't see as much last year from Dallas Goedert. So I don't know, again, if it's an attitude thing with A.J. Brown or what the case is going to be. But A.J. Brown, in years past with Philadelphia, is way more involved than we just saw him tonight, and I think it's very much worth mentioning. Now, Saquon Barkley, I want to touch on this really quick. Saquon looked really good. On a touch-by-touch basis, Saquon was a very good player for the Eagles tonight. 18 carries for 60 yards and 1 touchdown. That number, 3.3 yards per carry, I think it's pretty deceiving. Because if you didn't watch the game, this game was delayed by lightning. So they didn't play for like a good hour. Up until that point, Saquon Barkley was averaging like 6 yards per carry. Out of half, that's when everything changed. Saquon Barkley was getting shut down by Dallas's defense. I don't know if it was an offensive line problem. Landon Dickerson did miss time in that second half as well. Or I don't know if it was because Saquon was bad in the second half and he was just not ready to go. Or maybe it was because Dallas' defense just picked up and figured it out during their locker room stay during that delay. But I will say that I think Saquon Barkley's numbers were a little bit deceiving in this game because he was mostly pretty dominant in this performance. Got in the end zone once, and like I said, had basically 6 yards per carry in the first half. But the one thing I will say is that Will Shipley was involved, more so towards the beginning of the game. It did look like at some points that they were trying to take the ball out of Saquon Barkley's hands to keep him fresh. And this is something I've been harping on all offseason. I have done research for a long time now about running backs with 350 plus touch seasons and what happens to them the following season. And what we have seen throughout history over the last 11 seasons is that running backs after that big season, they either get injured because they're handed more volume or the same, or they are given less volume. It looks like Saquon may be given less volume this year, but it is still too early to tell on this one. And of course, just cover Jalen Hurts really quick. Jalen Hurts was really good in fantasy because the guy can run the ball. Like, this guy is dominant running the football. He is just a dominant presence in the run game. But Jalen Hurts, I did not come away super impressed with him throwing the ball tonight. And I understand he did well from a statistical standpoint. 19 for 23 and 152 yards passing through the air. But what I'm saying is that I didn't see too many down the field throws, aside from that big one up the middle of the field to Jahan Dotson in the first half. A lot of his throws were over the middle of the field for like 3 yards, 7 yards, 10 yards. And that's fine. But what I was saying throughout the whole offseason was I expect more throws from Jalen Hurts to take the ball out of Saquon's hands more. Maybe the case is going to be that Will Shipley and A.J. Dillon are just going to be more involved on a per-game basis. And it's not necessarily going to be that Jalen throws more, because we did not see that tonight. So while Jalen is great in fantasy still because of that rushing upside, it is worth noting that this guy did not come away throwing a big bunch of down the field throws like I kind of expected we would see tonight. So let me know what you thought of the game tonight in the comments below, and make sure to stay tuned for tomorrow's videos in my must start and sit defense videos for week 1 fantasy football.